Hey, do you want to come over and make a pot of tea, bring your favorite crystals? We could talk about our birth charts, spirits, the latest house spells we've been doing. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm that witch next door. Hey everybody, Danny here. Quick note, you will hear my audio in this episode with Ashley sounds significantly worse than it usually does. Had a couple technology blunders, Mercury and Pisces, no joke. Just wanted to let you know that I am aware. It's just for this one episode. Thanks for your patience. It's still a really, really good episode. Without further ado, here is Ashley and I.
Hello, neighbor. Hi, and welcome to another episode of That Witch Podcast, another episode of Shadow Chats. I am here joined by the lovely Ashley Michelle of StarSeedShadows. Hey, Ash.
Oh, hey, girl.
We've got another new moon, so, we got to come talk our shadowy shit.
Yes, we do. I am nerding out so hard about eclipse season. Can I just tell you?
I'm loving your eclipse content.
I'm nerding out. It's like the first one is going right through Rochester. I was just on Facebook the other day. I'm like, where are we watching it at? What's going on? Like, let's get our lawn chairs.
Oh my God,
Such a nerd over it.
Yeah,
and I bring that up because...
a solar?
The first one is solar, I believe. Oh. And then I think after that it's a lunar. I can't fully remember, but I know it's coming right through Rochester. And I bring that up because one of the eclipses is in Pisces this year, and we're dealing with a fat-ass Pisces stellium for what we're going to talk about today. So it all just made me think about it.
There's been so
Pisces plays a big role this year.
Yes, Pisces does play a big role this year. I've been fascinated by the upcoming Saturn and Pisces for a while. And this whole time while Saturn's in Pisces, I'm just like watching.
Saturn is learning some lessons, honey.
Yes.
And Saturn is always the lesson giver. And no, Saturn, sit down. You are going to learn how to chill the fuck out in 2024.
Oh my fucking God. This is exactly how I saw the Saturn and Pisces energy before Saturn moved into Pisces too. Because I was like, this is where the teacher becomes a student.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Absolutely. So we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, some of this anyways today. Let's get into this new moon in Pisces, which is coming up, everybody. If you would like this information to pull up a chart. The new moon is happening exact on March 10th, 2024 at 5 a.m. Eastern time at 20 degrees Pisces. And you can pull this up a couple of ways. You can just pull up the plain chart. That's what I'm looking at. It's just a chart of the new moon's astrology in my location.
And I'm on Astro-charts. Or astro.com, sorry.
Astro.com, but for your location, Ash.
For my location. Well, actually, New York.
Okay, for New York. But
I always do New York.
So our houses could look a little bit different. That's what the location will do. But for everybody, the planets, the celestials, they'll all be in the same sign.
What do your houses look like? So where's the sun and moon for you? So the sun and moon are in the second house for me.
Oh, they are for me too. I bet you and I are close enough now that we're on the East Coast.
Yeah. But you do bring up a valid point.
That's one way you can look at this. The other way you can look at the new moon is you can pull up your chart on your favorite app, your favorite website, and you can pull up your birth chart and run a transit chart and plug in these same details. And what it will do is it'll put the current chart for the new moon and your natal chart stacked on top of each other so you can see how the nature energy of this astrology plays a role in your life specifically. Since
Which it can be really, really handy.
Really handy, and probably the way I would recommend the most. What Ashley and I are doing is best for what we're doing because we're giving a collective reading. If Ash and I were talking about how the new moon affects us, and we do that like as friends, we're going to pull it up in our own chart, and we're going to talk about like what the new moon looks like for each of us. But because we're talking about it from a general standpoint, this type of chart is easier to read because it pulls you out of your bias a little bit more.
Exactly.
And yeah, you kind of look at the big picture a little bit more. We have, as we've mentioned here, we have a pretty big Pisces stellium right now, for sure, like Ash mentioned. So we have Saturn, the moon, and the sun. Since this is during a new moon, they'll be conjunct or conjoined. And we have Neptune. Can I just say I am fascinated by Neptune moving into Aries, by the way. I just have to throw that out there.
Honey.
Yes.
And here's the thing about Neptune. It's like, either it's like, we get it or we don't. Like, Neptune is the planet of illusion. So it's like, either this is going to work out perfectly for us, or we're going to be walking around thinking we're doing everything right. We're making all the mistakes.
Yes.
And I feel like Neptune and Aries, that's the vibe. Because Aries is so a matter of fact.
Yes.
You know, like, I can do no wrong. Like, this is what we're doing. Like, Aries can't sometimes see past themselves. Aries cannot be objective all the time. So that is going to be a fascinating situationship.
Yes.
For folks that have heavy Aries placements specifically.
I agree. Because Aries is also they are up for a fucking adventure. Like, don't get me wrong.
Sure are.
Also, like, down to try anything new.
They sure are,
and
yeah.
you still don't really peg Aries for being like the most open-minded in the world either.
When Aries has made up its mind, Aries has made up its mind. And that's what she said on period. Yeah.
Sag is also up for an adventure, but a lot more open-minded. And that's where it's a lot more laid back. Aries is still up for any adventure, but kind of a know-it-all a lot of the time. So
they can be a little uptight. Danny, I need to know, what do you think about all the fucking planets being in the lower half of the chart for this new moon? The only folks I have above the sun are Lilith placements. Everything else is below the horizon.
Yeah, and so number one, this means for anyone new to looking at the chart, if the sun is below the horizon, it's dark outside where you are. So like, and you're probably like, yeah, done. I'm like, no, on the chart.
Yes,
so
on the chart,
when you're looking at the chart, if the sun is on the lower half of the chart itself, in that location, it is nighttime. And so during this new moon, not only is a new moon already signified by being in the dark, being in the unseen, and what we see with our eyes closed. This Pisces energy is also going to literally be in the dark, depending on where you live. If you're in the US, since this will be at nighttime, I could see this being a potentially heavy new moon, either in emotionality or just physical energy, and feeling particularly tired during the day and wanting to be awake and doing things at night during the nighttime. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to those original teachings, right? So above the chart, any planets or energies above the chart were external, right? This person is involved with the external and understanding themselves through other people. And below, it's very internal, understanding yourself through yourself. So for me, when I see all of this planetary energy below that horizon line, I see it as incredibly internal, introspective ways of being. And I want you all to remember, like, good or bad are just constructs, right? So like what I'm about to say, please have that in mind. But this could go a couple of different ways. You could be really like standoffish, shut off, like I don't want to deal with anything. Or like you could quite literally internalize something. Because let's not forget, Pisces is super emotional. Pisces is the martyr. Pisces feels a whole lot. So maybe like somebody triggers you, or like something goes down, or like you misunderstand something, and you know, you quite literally internalize something that you shouldn't. We're hypersensitive. This new moon to me looks like lots of hypersensitivity, especially for signs with heavy water placements like you and myself.
Totally. Especially
You know?
if you're, where your placements are in any of the water signs. Because the Pisces stellium here is spread out. It's going to hit a lot of degrees.
Yeah, it is spread out.
Except for in the very lowest degrees. And either way, I still tell people, I'm like, you know, in a lot of ways, the water still activates water regardless of the degree. In my opinion, I will say that. And same with any of the elements, because that's what a trine is. The elements do connect with and activate one another. So this is definitely, I would agree, a particularly introspective time and new moon, especially for water signs.
And Mercury at 0 degrees too, the planet of communication and thought.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Wow.
But keep in mind, Mercury will have just come out of fall in Pisces. So it might feel like a little lift out of some of that Pisces heaviness. We might feel like, oh, at least I can like talk again. At least I can understand again. A lot of times, some of our biggest struggles and most common struggle you're here during Mercury and Pisces are struggles with miscommunication, just not understanding, or when people describe things like, we just weren't on the same page. We just weren't in sync. That's very, very common during Mercury and Pisces, because you're having to, it's on purpose. Mercury needs to be in fall in Pisces so that it's not overly confident in its communication skills. We always have something to learn in how we can communicate and interact with each other even better. I think what's really interesting too about you pointing out the horizon is depending on the chart that you're looking at, because not everybody follows any or all of the asteroids.
Right.
I follow Chiron, and I follow the goddess asteroids and Lilith. There's other asteroids that I don't personally follow as well. There's way more than that, honestly, that I don't personally follow.
Thousands.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
There's seriously so many. And it is fascinating. They are fascinating to read out. To read about. I just don't track them. But because I do follow the goddess asteroids in my chart with my settings that I'm looking at, those are other than the South Node, those are the only energies above the horizon. I have Ceres, Pallas Athena, and Juno, the goddess energies. In the outward, external, visible, yes, and Lilith. And I think that's
Moon,
really
Lilith, and asteroid Lilith specifically. Yeah, I think it's very interesting too. I can't recall seeing a chart like this.
I know. How do you kind of interpret the goddesses being in control of the daytime during that time?
Yeah.
Because that's what's seen. Again, remember, the horizon, everybody represents what's out in the daylight.
What's seen.
Everything else beneath the surface is in the underworld, or the realms of the unseen and the dark.
Well, I mean, I think we have to think about it in the energy that we're dealing with, right? Piscean energy is it's divine feminine. It's feminine energy at its best. It's very spiritual. It's very Akashic. It's very galactic. You know what I mean? And the goddesses are taking over the day. And so for me, when I look at this chart, like, this is reminding me, myself, and in turn reminding you all to make sure that we're sitting in our goddess energy. And that's for kings, queens, and everybody in between, right? Because we've got energy in all spots, right? To make sure, I can't drive the point home enough that Pisces is an amazing energy, but also a very sensitive and sometimes even fragile energy. And with all of this concentration down there on this new moon, it can be quite easy for us to take things out of turn, for us to be incredibly into our feelings and emotions, for us to not know how to express them. Again, with Mercury moving out of Pisces, and honestly, Mercury moving into Aries, to me, the way I see that is bluntness, right? And sometimes bluntness isn't always the best. So I think it's a reminder to remember like how balanced and physical the feminine can be, and like maybe even stepping into some womb work, right? Some root chakra work, and just really finding out what that means for us. Our world, right? I've had my coffee and it's kicking in, but like, it's like, our world is so patriarchal and we live in it every single day. And I think, and yeah, we're making a push towards the divine feminine, but we've been doing that for what, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? We're talking about centuries of isolation, centuries of the same idea being over and over again beaten into us, right? The patriarchy, the patriarchy, the patriarchy, the centuries of work, 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 do, be, now, now, now. It's not going to be reversed in even a decade. And so I feel like we can utilize all this Piscean energy and with the asteroid goddesses above the horizon, just to really take some time out to be with the divine feminine. And maybe even those of us who have partners who identify as like, I'm a man, maybe educating them a little bit on what their divine feminine can bring to the table. Because I think that's really important too.
Yeah, so whenever I see so when Ashley's talking about polarizing energies,
yeah,
and what's associated with left-brained masculine, or yang energy, and what's associated with right brain feminine yin energy. Light is what belongs to masculine energy, and dark is what belongs to feminine energy. And yes, and this is flipped. And whenever, ever in astrology, I see any example of that, whether it's Mercury in fall in Pisces, or someone who's a Libra rising, so they have an opposing chart where all of their signs are opposite where they are on the traditional house chart. Whenever I see anybody having to do full-blown role reversals, this is always a sign from the universe for me that none of us ever, number one, truly belong to either column. It's more complex, it's more nuanced than that. And we are therefore meant to flow between the two columns throughout various cycles and various stages of our journeys. You're supposed to be doing the masculine, yang, left brain thing sometimes. It brings its value that it brings to the table, but it is not its own self-sustaining entity. It is one part of a greater whole, which also encompasses yin, feminine, right-brained energy. Right. And without the contrast of the two, many would argue that our soul growth wouldn't exist at all. If we didn't have polarizing energy or contrast or dynamic or oppositions, any of those concepts, we wouldn't grow at all. That tension and that oppositional interaction in the first place is what stimulates growth.
I totally agree with you. There's a book, I can't remember what it was, Sagittarius being a Sag. It was a channeled book. It may have been the Sophia Code. I can't remember. Either way, the author was talking about that concept, the concept of contrast, and how in Earth School, contrast is one of the universal laws. As above, so below, the first rule of witchcraft. We must have this in order to have this soul growth, this quote ascension, that buzz term in our world, right? Like, what is ascension? None of that. We cannot be ascending individuals without contrast. Because how can we ascend if there's nothing to ascend to, if there's no contrast? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I love that you brought that up.
There's no reference. You don't have, would not know what love truly can be if you don't have the complete opposite to compare it to.
Exactly.
That's how our human brains work and how they learn. And so whenever I see a bunch of planets that tend to thrive or feel more comfortable or more familiar with the top half of the chart, being out in the light, being really visible. It's all about what's out there, and I don't have to do any of this inside stuff, having to go into their own underworld. we see this is exactly why I think you, Ash, said this is going to hit different depending on the kind of person you are. Because some of us, that's a real natural place. I have a night chart. That means that me and Ash were born at night, and it means that our suns are in the lower half of the chart. There's a reason Ash and I are both night owls.
Right.
We wake up at night and we're creative at night.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised if you and your relationship, did you guys like Jared and I have always been able to stay up all night long talking about everything under the sun, hanging out. Like we both totally like this is what night chart
vibe out at night.
Do.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
exactly.
can too with my partner for sure.
Yes. But there are people who going into your own underworld, going into your own unconscious, going into the dark in general, the darker themes in life, the darker aspects of oneself, this can feel beyond uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that was kind of what I was getting at.
Exactly.
Yeah. It can be a little rough for some people, especially depending on like where you're at in life too.
Yes.
You know, what's done in the dark.
And if you like what you see, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You and I do so much inner work. It's not like it's all sunshine and rainbows when we got to do it. But at the same time, like it doesn't like
overwhelming.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, remember what I told you when we first got on? I was like, Pisces season is feeling real smooth for me this year. You know, and Pisces season can be a bit rough for a lot of people because Pisces season has a way of bringing stuff up that you'd rather not deal with, you know?
Exactly.
But we were literally just saying that when we started that something about Pisces season, like I was like, okay, let's do it, Pisces. Let's hang out, honey. You know,
I think that I want to ask your opinion too about the chart. You know, we still have this very, very strong square between Taurus and Aquarius happening. This was also true for the Virgo full moon because Uranus is a slow mover. Mars and Venus have been hanging out in the sign of Aquarius. And during this new moon, we have a pretty close to exact square between specifically Uranus at 19 degrees Taurus and Mars at 20 degrees Aquarius.
And Jupiter too. Looks like Jupiter squaring Mars.
And Jupiter, certainly isn't far behind that.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
How do you see the Aquarius Taurus square here?
Oh, God. Well, I mean, I think it's a fight between liberation and stability. You know, like that's what I see. We've been working with Uranus and Taurus for a long time now. And I think we've seen, you know, Uranus is an outer planet. That should be important to say. So it can affect us generationally, right? So when we're looking at Uranus and when we're interpreting Uranus, we're looking at how that planet in Taurus specifically is going to affect us as a collective. So, you know, changes with our government. We're in an election year. We could go on and on. That's a whole other podcast. But just so that people can kind of see how us as astrologers have been looking at Uranus and Taurus. But then you have Aquarius, which is by no means being quiet this year in 2024 with Pluto kind of bobbing back and forth. You know, I think we are on the precipice of some really big change when it comes to our technology, this AI stuff that's coming in and where AI is polarizing a lot of people. You know, are we here for it? Are we not here for it?
Totally.
It really is. You know, the cloning stuff. If you guys have noticed, there's so many more documentaries on Netflix on cloning. So there's like 3 or 4 ones that just recently dropped in the last month. Is that by coincidence? No, we're in the age of Aquarius.
We're being a little conditioned to be prepared 100%.
Yes. We were just talking about conspiracy theories in the last episode, and now like I'm going to get on one a little bit, but that's exactly what's happening. The alien stuff, it's not by coincidence at all, this alien stuff. Whether or not you all believe what happened in Miami happened, it doesn't matter. The fact that the aliens are more of conversation today than they ever have been
in Congress.
Televised.
You need to understand that whether you believe in it or not, Congress, this is televised information that they have talked about
Right.
The possibility, it's being talked about, and it's never, ever been talked about, at least
not
where
we
have been allowed to see it. Because many of us would say it's been being talked about by government for a long time. We just weren't allowed to know.
not on this level, right? Not on this level.
Yeah.
And
No way.
between that and the cloning stuff and AI coming up, and it is 2024. Again, we're in an election year. There is like, do we stay in the old way of doing things, or do we revolutionize? That's what I think too, because Taurus is this energy that loves staying where it's at. And I think that Uranus and Taurus is helping it out a little bit, because Uranus is the mad scientist, you know?
Totally.
Uranus likes to do things differently. Uranus likes to change things up. Aquarius also gives no fucks. This year, 2024 is going to be really very detached, kind of
from emotions. It doesn't mean it's unemotional, but it doesn't. It's going to put that aside a lot easier than Pisces would put that aside.
100%. 100%. And so I think looking at that square, going back to your questions, I know I tangented really hard, like Aquarius versus Taurus, I truly think that 2024 is going to feel good for a lot of us. But I think collective wise, we're going to see this square take place in our like bigger systems, like top down versus on an individual level.
I really agree with this. And the other message that I have been feeling and having reflected back at me from multiple different random places in my life. I've heard this on podcasts, in emails from people I follow. I read it. I see this in the astrology and like what we're talking about with this particular square. The message that keeps coming forth to me is this is one of those times of progress where you will either adapt to it,
right,
or you won't. And if you don't adapt to it, you are going to be flattened out by it. That's how big, because Uranus is one of the rulers of Aquarius. You have to remember this when we're talking about this particular square between Taurus and Aquarius. This is involving one of the rulers of Aquarius, who also, quite frankly, doesn't give a fuck and is in a sign very similar to Saturn right now, where Uranus is in a sign that doesn't really go hand in hand with Taurus energy.
Not the most comfortable there.
Yes, exactly. I do think I agree with you. I think that because it's in Taurus and this is Uranus, and we're talking about squaring off with its sign that rules Aquarius. And keep in mind, we have Mars there, who can be destructive, but a doer, and we have Venus there, who's a very, very benevolent energy. To me, who's the ruler of Taurus, by the way. So the way I see this is this could be absolutely a time revolutionary for our long-term sustainability and security if we can lean into that.
And that's going to be the big question, because there's still a lot of folks out there who are stuck in an old way of thinking.
Exactly.
I mean,
that's the shadow of Taurus.
That's the shadow of Taurus. And the thing is about it is we don't see it. If you're listening to this podcast, you are probably surrounding yourself with, spiritual knowledge, astro knowledge, tarot knowledge, whatever it is, right? You're picking up what we're putting down. But we are a dot on like the matrix of podcasters. And so that is to say, there are way more people than we realize that still are stuck in old patterns, old belief systems, and old thinking, and would absolutely laugh in your face if you ask them if they believe in aliens. Which again is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. But there are people that really would be like, what? Which is insane.
It's insane to me with the information we have now. Even just the information in science, literally painting how infinite our universe is. That's just
since we were children, we were taught that.
Exactly. That's just
the universe
so ridiculous.
Is infinite. So we're the only intelligent life in an infinite world that we know nothing about.
Exactly.
We don't even know about our oceans, and we want to say there's nothing out in the cosmos.
Exactly.
Sit down. Tell me more about our oceans first.
There's a reason why, and Ash and I talked about this on the Aquarius New Moon. There's a reason why the farther you go, and this is so Aquarius and Pisces, by the way, these final two signs of the zodiac wheel. And this is where Aquarius, there's only so far you can go to in science before you inevitably find yourself at the spiritual, at the ether.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and it's so true.
And that is Pisces.
That's so Pisces. And like,
that's
if
the
you
transition.
Right, like go deeper into that. Like really what Danny's saying, like you go deep into physics, you know, quantum mechanics, like all of these like higher level sciences, it does always circle back. Speaking of which, Einstein documentary just came out. That's on my list to watch.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
I mean, we are 100% being conditioned, and it, like you said, we can sink or we can swim. We can get down with it, or we can fall back off it, whatever it is. And I don't know what it's going to be. Robotics is a huge thing. One of my clients, her husband just got a really important gig in robotics, and he's doing his PhD. So I was picking her brain about it, and she's like, they're doing some like revolutionizing things in the world of robotics right now. I'm like, I can only imagine. Our world is changing before our eyes. Remember, Danny, you and I come from leaving the voice notes on our answering machines. And like, that was fun. It's like, Mom, can I leave the message on the answering machine? Gigapets. Okay. Pagers. I remember those like it was yesterday. Into now AI, robotics, chat GBT, all of these things. It's absolutely insane. Oh my God. I could talk all day about
had a family computer.
On one.
If you were a place
family computer with dial up.
Computer, you had a family. It was one computer. It was huge, plus the tower, plus the monitor, plus the keyboard, plus the mouse. It got hot as fuck. You couldn't be on it for too long before you had to turn it down. You had to restart those bitches all the time.
Oh my God.
And factory reset them. It was a hot mess.
My God, yeah.
We went from that to walking around with this like
computer in her hand.
And not just computer in a hand, it can do more than those computers could do.
In less than a lifetime. This is Age of Aquarius, my friends. In less than a fucking lifetime, we did that.
I listened
when you think about it, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
When you think
absolutely
about it.
So when I recently listened to Pluto and Aquarius throughout history on Chris Brennan's podcast on the
Love Chris Brennan. I'm gonna write that down.
Really good. It's a fucking investment. It's 4 hours, but it was so worth it. And
Chris Brennan is very long-winded, but he's great. He's great.
Genius. He's brilliant.
Incredibly long. You said it's an investment.
Yeah. It's the podcast, but
my God.
Guest, and I'm sorry the guest is slipping my mind the name, but him and his guests go through Pluto throughout history. Is fascinating. Since I believe where they started was 800 BC.
Ooh.
They went pretty far back. It was really thorough, really good. The point is that when they went far back, Chris Brennan is introducing the first kind of era of history that we were examining in that episode. And he gives this really important reminder about like, we only have decoded and interpreted so much of ancient language.
Right.
We think that we like
know everything.
Exactly. So much of what we say that ancient people do is 100% theory. It's 100% speculation of we have found these things. We have been able to translate this much. This is what we're able to put together. And what he was talking about was one day AI like Chat GPT being able to accurately interpret the ancient texts and like exactly.
Can you imagine?
And you would love this. I knew you would love
my
that.
God.
When he said that, I was at the gym and I had to like stop for a second.
Seriously. Wow.
I was like,
and I believe it too.
I know.
I believe
that's
it
what
too.
that is
crazy.
Quintessential Age of Aquarius to me. Because of course it's easy to talk about the doomsday of AI.
Right.
But if you can let yourself think about what it could allow us to do, that is incredible. Incredible.
Right. Right.
It's real. You guys, anybody who's interested in this, you should, I'll link it in the show notes. You should go listen to the episode, because even talking about what right now reminds me of is the invention of paper. And they talked about how the invention of paper and then the printing press absolutely revolutionized learning and access to information, because
and those both happened during Pluto and Aquarius.
Yeah, or they were associated around Pluto and Aquarius.
I remember learning about that in school, the invention of paper.
Yes, and it they either, Chris Brennan, again, he's so detailed. He tells you the exact date. So like he'll tell you if it happened during Pluto and Aquarius, or if it's one of the byproducts that took place immediately after Pluto went into Pisces, and he considers it like a ripple effect from Pluto and Aquarius. Invention of gunpowder they talk about and connect. It's fascinating. It's fascinating because that's weaponized, or that's industrialized murder, essentially killing. And it's really because Aquarius rules over all of technology. Keep in mind, everybody, just to bring this full circle into Pisces.
I know we went left.
This makes sense. I have a good full circle moment. This is a big teaching moment because it's one of those, it's very similar to the book Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Sometimes you have to ask yourself the human, moral, ethical thing. Just because we can doesn't mean we should. And Pisces is the energy, and I believe this is why we end the zodiac on a water sign. Because it means we all end up reflecting in the end on our entire experience, on all of our choices and everything we've done. And I really can see this new moon in Pisces being that night chart, being everything under the horizon, a time where you feel particularly confronted by your experience, your past history of humans, and how you cope with that moving forward.
Oh God, I love that. So well said. So well said.
It's really, this is when Ash and I talk about these really big things like this, it's not to scare and intimidate. It's so you can have the courage to like lean into these things.
100%. And we also have to remember, like, why are you listening to this podcast, right? Like, is it going in one ear out the other? Are we applying this knowledge that we're learning? You know, I think Danny and I are both walking examples of what implementation can do for your life. And so it's not to fearmonger and it's not to scare. It is about like, let's confront why things are going subpar. Because none of us deserves a subpar existence. We deserve greatness. You know what I mean? And we deserve to be able to strive for greatness and be the best version of self that we can be. And the only way to do that is by allowing that confrontation to happen, even if it's icky and sticky and ick, which sometimes, fuck yeah, it can be. You know what I mean? But that's why we're here, to confront our demons, to slay our dragons. And that's okay. You know? Normalizing this work is okay.
Absolutely. If it's one thing that the 12th house represents, that the entire night or bottom half of the chart represents, it's the rebirth and the transformation that takes place in these themes, in these moments. And so I think that there is evidence fucking everywhere, spiritually and non-spiritually, of a time of transformation that we are all currently in right now as humans. And I think that it's easy to look at the shitty parts of it, but I think you can see this too, Ashley, the fucking magic that we're making.
Oh my God, so much magic. I like sit in gratitude every goddamn day. Every goddamn day, because like I would be a shell of a human being had I stayed on the path that I was on. You know, very low vibe. So, and we're only going up from here. I'm learning more about myself every single day in this world and in this work and doing the work, you know. So let's fucking do the work.
Exactly. The way that I want to leave this is, Ash, for anybody that finds themselves having a hard time during this astrological energy for a lot of the reasons we talked about today. What what words do you want to give them to remind themselves if they do find themselves struggling with this?
Reconnect with your feminine. If you're struggling with this, it's resistance from your masculine. That's the way that I interpret it, because again, we are taught to not feel, just do, to not interact, just act, to just continue to be in this robotic almost mode. And so if you find yourself struggling or even like impatient or sad or frustrated, reconnect with your feminine. And that could be different for everybody. That could be body movement. That could be breath work. That could be having a good cry. That could be taking a bath. That could be having sex. That could be pleasing yourself. That could be eating some good food. It could be watching a movie. What does that mean for you? The feminine is indicative of stillness, is the way I see it. Like really just being with oneself. And so what does that mean for you? The imagery coming through for me right now for you all is doing a root chakra cleansing with like a piece of selenite or something like that. Very easy to do. You just take your selenite wand and move it clockwise around your root chakra. And you can also just kind of leave it there and hang out with it on your lap while you're watching TV or while you're in meditation. But that's the imagery that just came through for us all. So maybe I'll pin this and make sure I get that done for myself as well.
I love that. I love that a lot. I think that I would add, and I think I'm going to take my own advice too, like you just said, Ash, even cleansing the energy of wherever you sit, because that's where your root chakra is connected. So if you where do you sit? Most of us sit for a lot of our day, or we have a frequent place that we sit. That could be a really good way to do a root chakra cleansing.
Exactly.
I think I'm going to do that with my computer chair for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Really frequently. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I'm probably going to do that with my bed. Again, Cancer rising. I love my bed.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, 100% do that with my bed.
That's another way that this energy might show up. This might just be a really active dream time for you. You might be particularly tired right now because you are just really called to those Piscean realms, quite honestly. Yeah.
Right. And just to add on to that too, this may be a great time for you to channel. Like if you've been working on, strengthening your channel and working on your meditative practices or connecting with the galactic realm, this would be a good time to go and do that. Whether you do it in a group setting or alone, great. Like new moon in Pisces with all this Piscean energy, it's really perfect for channeling those of you who are really into channeling. So yeah, something else to do.
Oh, I love that. That's really, really, really good advice. Oh, I love this. Everybody, take a nice big deep breath with me. I'm excited. This feels like a very good new moon in Pisces.
I'm excited
with me, Ash.
Yeah, it's the end. We didn't even get to the fact that it's the end of the zodiacal new year. We didn't even get there yet.
I know.
There's so much to talk about.
So much going on right now. Big chapters closing. Totally.
Big chapters closing. So,
all right, everybody. Thank you for being here with us today. This was a fucking beautiful Shadow Chats. Ash, you can please tell us where we can find you, follow you, support you, and your work right now.
Yeah. Ashley Michelle 90 Day on the gram. Ashley Michelle 90 Day on TikTok. If you want to join me inside the Eclipse series, the first session will be on the 25th of March. The link will be in the show notes, or you can find it on my Instagram, but that's going to be a whole vibe.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm like geeking out over this eclipse, dude. I can't wait to like do my astronomy geek out and then my astrology geek out and then like my spiritual geek out and then like do it with people. Yeah. I'm really excited about it. So yeah, come join me in there. And you guys know our DMs are open. So yeah, it's on that.
Yes. Oh, I love it so much. Yes, you can find all of that information in the show notes below. Thank you for your time today, neighbor. It is always such a pleasure to sit with you. Make sure that, of course, you are staying safe. Y'all are letting yourselves have some damn fun. And stay magical out there, my friends.
Questions, comments, suggestions, or just looking for That Witch outside of That Witch podcast? Make sure you're following me on social media over on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and Twitter. You can find links to all of those in the show notes below. And make sure you're subscribed to my email newsletter by going to thatwitchnextdoor.com and submitting your